The crystalline towers of Zephyria Prime gleamed under the pale light of 3 moons, their surfaces reflecting the organized chaos of the most powerful military installation in the Galactic Consortium. Within the central spire, Queen Lorelei of the Zephyrian Empire stood before a massive holographic display, her violet eyes fixed on the scrolling intelligence reports that painted an increasingly troubling picture. At barely 23 cycles old, Lorelei had inherited not just a throne, but a war that had raged for 6 standard years across 17 star systems. The enemy was unlike anything the galaxy had ever encountered: humans. A species so primitive they had only achieved faster-than-light travel 2 decades ago. Yet somehow they had carved through consortium forces like a plasma blade through silk. "Your Majesty," General Karatha's deep voice rumbled behind her. The veteran Drachmarie commander's scales rippled with barely contained frustration. "The latest reports from the Kepler front are disturbing." Lorelei didn't turn from the display. "Define disturbing, General." 3 of our heavy cruisers destroyed. The orbital defense platform at Kepler 7 is completely gone. Our casualties exceed 12,000, while human losses. Karath paused, his mandibles clicking in agitation. 47 confirmed dead. The young queen's fingers tightened on the control surface. 47. In a battle that had cost the consortium 12,000 of their finest warriors, these humans had lost less than 50. It was beyond comprehension. The Zephyrians were a warrior culture, bred for combat across 1,000 generations. The Drachmarie were living weapons, their very biology designed for war. The silicon-based Crystarch could compute battlefield probabilities with perfect accuracy. Yet these soft, pink mammals from a backwater world called Earth continued to hand them devastating defeats. "Ow!" Lorelei whispered, then louder, "How is this possible, Karath? Our technology is superior. Our warriors are superior. Our numbers are superior. Yet we keep losing." The general's reptilian features darkened. "They don't fight like us, Majesty. They don't follow patterns. Every tactical manual in our databases becomes useless the moment we engage them. They're unpredictable." Lorelei, finally, turned to face her war council. Besides Karath, the room held Admiral Thesha of the Crystarch Navy, her translucent blue form shimmering with embedded calculations, and Commander Vexhai of Zephyrian Intelligence, his metallic implants gleaming against pale skin. "Show me the Kepler battle recordings," she commanded. The holographic display shifted, showing the tactical overview of the recent engagement. 3 consortium heavy cruisers, each a kilometer long and bristling with plasma cannons, had cornered a single human ship near Kepler 7's asteroid belt. On paper, it should have been a massacre. The recording began. The human vessel was tiny by comparison, perhaps 200 meters of aggressive angles and strange, non-symmetrical design. As the consortium ships moved to surround it, the human ship did something no Zephyrian captain would ever consider. It accelerated directly toward the largest cruiser. "Suicide run," Admiral Thesha's crystalline voice chimed. "Standard human desperation tactic." But that wasn't what happened. At the last possible moment, the human ship deployed something the sensors couldn't properly identify, then used the cruiser's own gravity well to slingshot around it at impossible velocity. In the same maneuver, it released a spread of what appeared to be simple kinetic projectiles. The projectiles weren't aimed at the cruiser it had just passed. Instead, they arced through space in seemingly random trajectories until they reached the asteroid belt. The impacts were tiny, barely registering on sensors. Then, the asteroids began to move. They turned the entire asteroid field into a weapon, Commander Vexhai observed, his voice tight with something approaching admiration. The kinetic strikes altered orbital mechanics. They created a cascade effect. Lorelei watched in growing amazement as chunks of rock, some the size of city blocks, began raining down on the consortium fleet. But even that wasn't the end. As her ships tried to maneuver away from the improvised asteroid storm, the human vessel had somehow positioned itself in their blind spots, using the chaos it had created as perfect cover. The weapons it deployed, defied classification. Missiles that seemed to think for themselves, finding impossible attack vectors. Energy beams that punched through shields designed to stop plasma cannons. Most disturbing of all, boarding pods that somehow attached to the cruisers despite their defensive screens. The boarding actions were the most troubling aspect, General Karath growled. Our security footage shows humans fighting in ways that should be impossible. They use the ship's own systems against us. They turn our defensive positions into traps. One human female was recorded holding off an entire security squad while hanging upside down from a ventilation grate, using nothing but small arms and improvised explosives. The tactical display now showed internal camera feeds from the doomed cruiser. Lyralii watched in fascination as human soldiers moved through her ships like wraiths. They were smaller than most consortium species. Their equipment looked primitive, but they fought with a savage creativity that left even experienced Drakmari warriors confused and dead. One sequence showed a human male, wounded and apparently cornered in an engineering section, jury-rigging the ship's artificial gravity to create localized zones where up became down. Zephyrian Marines, trained to fight in zero-G, found themselves helplessly tumbling as the human picked them off one by one. Another feed captured a human team somehow turning a food replicator into an improvised weapon, flooding a corridor with superheated protein paste that hardened on contact with air, trapping a squad of Christarch soldiers in place. They adapt, Lyralii murmured. That's what makes them dangerous. We train for specific scenarios, perfect our techniques, follow doctrine. They improvise. They turn our strengths into weaknesses. There's more, Majesty, Commander Vexhai said grimly. Intelligence has identified the human responsible for the Kepler victory. The same individual who orchestrated the disaster at Proxima Station and the miracle escape at Wolf 359. The display shifted to show a human male, perhaps 30 standard years old with dark hair and eyes that seemed to hold depths of calculation and mischief in equal measure. His name appeared beneath the image. Captain Marcus Chun, formerly of the Earth Defense Force, now commanding what humans called a privateer squadron. This one human has been present at 17 major engagements, Vexhai continued. Our losses in battles where he's involved increase by an average of 400%. He's become something of a legend among human forces. They call him the Ghost Captain. Lyralii studied the image. Captain Chun didn't look particularly impressive. He was average height for a human, with no visible augmentations or obvious signs of enhanced training. Yet this unremarkable individual had become the consortium's most wanted target. His ship, she asked. The Terran vessel Defiance, Admiral Thesha replied. Modified transport craft, approximately 200 meters, crew of 43. On paper, it shouldn't survive contact with a single consortium frigate, much less entire battle groups. The young queen made a decision that would have horrified her advisors had they known the full scope of her thinking. I want it captured. Majesty. General Karath's scales shifted to deep purple, indicating concern. Assassination would be more practical. We could slip a stealth ship into human territory, eliminate the target with precision strikes. No. Lyralii's voice carried the absolute authority of her bloodline. I want him alive. I want to understand how he thinks, how he sees battle differently than we do. Captain Chun isn't just a tactical genius. He's a window into the human mind. If we can understand him, we can understand all of them. Commander Vexhai's implants flickered as he processed the implications. Capturing him would require extraordinary measures, Majesty. He's too cunning to fall for conventional traps, and his crew is fanatically loyal. Humans have this strange concept they call honor among thieves that makes them extremely difficult to subvert. Then, we don't subvert them, Lyralii said, moving to the strategic display that showed current fleet positions. We give him something he can't resist. Humans are driven by what they call moral imperatives. They're compelled to act when they perceive injustice or when innocents are threatened. Admiral Thesha's crystalline form brightened with understanding. A trap disguised as a rescue operation. Precisely. Intelligence reports indicate Chen's squadron has been raiding our supply convoys, specifically targeting ships carrying medical supplies and food shipments to our occupied territories. He's not just fighting a war, he's trying to alleviate suffering. The Queen moved to another section of the display, highlighting a small system at the edge of consortium space. The Harmony Colony, a civilian research station studying stellar cartography. If we stage a crisis there, something that threatens innocent researchers, Chen's psychological profile suggests he won't be able to resist investigating. General Karatha's mandibles clicked approvingly. And when he arrives, we'll be waiting, not with obvious military forces that would trigger his suspicions, but with a carefully crafted scenario that draws him in step by step. Lyraliai's violet eyes gleamed with tactical excitement. Chen thinks 3 moves ahead of us because he expects us to think like military commanders. But I'm not approaching this as a military problem. What do you mean, Majesty? Commander Vexhai asked. I'm thinking like a human. The statement sent ripples of unease through the War Council. No Zephyrian ruler in history had ever suggested adopting alien thought patterns as a strategic approach. It bordered on the heretical, but Lyraliai was already deep into the planning phase, her mind racing through possibilities and contingencies with the same creative chaos she'd observed in human tactics. If Chun was unpredictable because he thought outside established patterns, then she would have to abandon her own patterns as well. Thesha, I need complete psychological profiles on Chen's crew. Not just tactical assessments, but personal motivations, emotional triggers, relationship dynamics. Humans fight as much for each other as for abstract causes. The Christarch Admiral's form flickered with rapid calculations. That level of behavioral analysis will require significant resources, Majesty. We would need deep surveillance, possibly capture personnel for interrogation. No interrogation, Lyraliai said firmly. Humans have this peculiar trait where torture makes them more defiant rather than compliant. We'll gather intelligence through observation and analysis of their public communications. Humans are surprisingly open about their inner thoughts when they think they're safe. Commander Vexhai leaned forward, his implants glowing with increased processing activity. If we're creating an elaborate deception, we'll need to consider that Chun might see through it. His success record suggests he's extremely paranoid and analytical, which is why the trap can't be perfect, Lyraliai replied, surprising them all. A flawless scenario would trigger his suspicions immediately. We need something with rough edges, minor inconsistencies that make it feel genuine. Humans trust situations that feel slightly broken because that matches their experience of reality. The young queen moved to the display showing current intelligence on human psychology, data gathered from 6 years of bitter warfare. They expect things to go wrong. They plan for failure as much as success. Chen's tactical doctrine actually incorporates the assumption that his plans will be disrupted and he'll need to improvise. So we give him things to improvise with, General Karath rumbled, beginning to understand the approach. We create a situation where his solutions play into our larger trap. Exactly. But more than that, we make him want to be there. Humans have this concept called agency that's central to their psychology. They need to feel like they're making their own choices, even when those choices are being manipulated. The War Council exchanged glances loaded with cultural confusion and grudging admiration. This young queen was proposing a level of psychological manipulation that went far beyond traditional military doctrine. It was innovative, risky, and completely unprecedented. The timeline, Admiral Thesha inquired. 3 standard weeks to set up the scenario. We'll need to position assets carefully, establish the research station's cover story, and create enough background chatter to make the situation feel organic. Chen's intelligence network is surprisingly sophisticated for a primitive species. Lyraliai turned back to the image of Captain Chun, studying his face with the intensity of a predator analyzing prey. Except she was beginning to realize that in the complex game they were about to play, the traditional roles of hunter and hunted might prove more fluid than anyone anticipated. One more thing, she said quietly. When we do capture him, he's to be treated with the respect due a worthy opponent. Human psychology includes concepts of honor and dignity that affect their cooperation levels. If we want useful information from him, we need his voluntary participation. You're assuming we'll successfully capture him, Majesty, Commander Vexai pointed out. What if he turns our trap against us? What if this ghost captain proves as elusive in captivity as he is in battle? Queen Lyralii smiled, an expression that would have chilled her enemies if they could have seen it. It was the smile of a young predator who had just realized she might be hunting prey that could bite back. Then, we'll have learned something valuable about humans, she said. And learning is the first step toward victory. As the War Council dispersed to begin preparations for the most complex military deception in Consortium history, none of them noticed the irony. In trying to think like a human, their young queen was about to discover that the line between hunter and hunted was far more dangerous than any of them imagined. 3 weeks after Queen Lyralii set her trap in motion, Captain Marcus Chun stood on the bridge of the Defiance, studying the distress signal that had appeared on their communications array 12 hours ago. Something about it didn't sit right, and after 6 years of fighting the Consortium, his instinct for danger had become finely tuned. "Sarah, run that signal through the analysis suite again," he called to his communications officer, Lieutenant Sarah Torres. "Focus on the background noise patterns." Torres's fingers danced across her console, her dark eyes reflecting the cascade of data streaming across multiple screens. At 26, she was the best signals intelligence specialist Chun had ever worked with, capable of detecting deception in electromagnetic wavelengths the way others could spot lies in facial expressions. "Still clean, Captain," she reported after several minutes of deep analysis. "If it's fake, it's the most sophisticated deception I've ever seen. The distress protocols match Consortium civilian standards. The transmission degradation is consistent with distance and stellar interference. Even the timestamp algorithms check out." Chun frowned, moving to the main display that showed their current position 3 light-years from the Harmony Colony Research Station. The distress signal painted a grim picture. A stellar observation facility hit by cascade reactor failure, 23 researchers trapped in failing life support. Rescue services too far away to arrive in time. "Sir," came the voice of his first officer, Commander Rebecca Hayes, from behind him. "With respect, we've already delayed response for 12 hours while running every scan imaginable. If there really are civilians dying over there." She didn't need to finish the thought. Chen's reputation among the human resistance wasn't built solely on military victories. The Ghost Captain was equally famous for impossible rescue missions, for pulling trapped civilians out of situations where other commanders would have written them off as acceptable losses. "I know, Becca," he said quietly. "It's just something feels orchestrated about this." The bridge of the Defiance was cramped compared to military vessels, a converted cargo hauler that had been transformed into something between a warship and a mobile base. 43 crew members lived and fought in spaces designed for half that number, but they become family over years of shared danger. "Maybe it is orchestrated," suggested Lieutenant Commander James Park for the tactical station. The Korean-American engineer had a gift for seeing patterns others missed. But by who? The research station has been operating for 2 years. If the Consortium wanted to use it as bait, why wait until now? Chin moved to Park Station, bringing up detailed scans of the Harmony system. 3 planets, 2 gas giants with extensive ring systems, 1 rocky world with a research station in polar orbit. No obvious military presence, no suspicious energy signatures, no fleet positions that could serve as ambush sites. "Because now is when they need me specifically," he mused. "After Kepler, after Proxima, after Wolf 359, I've become enough of a problem that capturing me is worth significant resources." "You think it's a trap?" Torres said. "It wasn't a question. I think everything's a trap until proven otherwise. The question is whether we can spring it safely." Chin's dark eyes moved across his crew, seeing the mixture of concern and determination that had carried them through 17 major battles. "What's our current tactical situation?" Commander Hayes pulled up the strategic display. Two consortium patrol fleets within 6 hours of the Harmony system, but both are currently engaged with other resistance cells. The nearest major installation is the supply depot at Rigel 4, 8 hours away at maximum burn. Escape routes. Multiple, Park reported. The ring systems provide excellent sensor shadows, and we've mapped 3 different jump points that could get us clear if things go bad. Chun studied the tactical situation for long minutes, his mind working through possibilities and counter-possibilities. The trap, if it was a trap, seemed almost too obvious, which could itself be a form of misdirection. "Sarah, any chatter about increased consortium activity in this sector?" "Negative, sir. Actually, it's been unusually quiet, almost like they've pulled back from regular patrols." That decided it. The absence of normal consortium activity was itself suspicious. Chun had never known the enemy to leave any sector unguarded, especially one this close to human-controlled space. "All right, people, we're going in, but we're doing this smart. Becca, plot an approach vector that keeps us in the ring shadows until the last possible moment. Park, I want passive scans only until we're committed. Torres, monitor all frequencies for any communication that shouldn't be there." "What about weapons status?" asked Sergeant Major Lisa Chin, no relation despite the shared surname, the ship's security chief. The former Marine had lost her left arm at Vega Station and replaced it with a mechanical prosthetic that could punch through consortium armor plating. "Armed but not obvious. If this is a rescue, we go in looking like a rescue ship. If it's a trap, we spring it on our terms." The Defiance came alive with purposeful activity as the crew prepared for what could be either a humanitarian mission or a deadly ambush. In the engineering section, Chief Petty Officer Wong and his team ensured the modified drives were running at peak efficiency. In the small medical bay, Dr. Elena Vasquez prepared for potential casualties while hoping for simple civilian evacuation. 6 hours later, they dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Harmony system, sensors immediately sweeping for threats while maintaining the facade of an approaching rescue vessel. "Contact," Torres reported immediately. "I'm reading the research station. Life signs are faint but present. The distress signal is still active. Any other ships in system?" "Negative on active sensors." "Wait." Her console flashed with new data. "I'm picking up debris patterns near the 3rd planet. Could be wreckage." Chun felt his tactical instincts sharpen. "What kind of wreckage?" "Unknown vessel, maybe 48 hours old. Energy signatures suggest it was destroyed by weapons fire, not mechanical failure." The plot thickened. A destroyed ship near a research station in distress could be coincidence, but Chun had stopped believing in coincidences years ago. "Take us in, but maintain combat readiness. If someone attacked that research station and destroyed a ship, they might still be around." The Defiance moved through the outer system with practiced stealth, using gravitational shadows and electromagnetic interference to mask their approach. As they drew closer to the research station, more details became clear. The Harmony colony was built into a captured asteroid, honeycombed with laboratories and living spaces. It looked exactly like what it claimed to be, a civilian scientific installation with no military value. The damage was obvious even from a distance, sections of the station venting atmosphere, while others showed signs of cascade power failures. "I'm reading 23 life signs scattered throughout the station," Dr. Vasquez reported from her scanning station. "Medical condition appears to be deteriorating, but they're alive." "Torres, any sign of what attacked them?" "Negative, sir. Whatever did this is long gone." "But," she paused, studying her readings. "The damage pattern is weird. It's not consistent with weapons fire. More like systematic sabotage." Chin's unease deepened. Sabotage implied inside knowledge, careful planning, possibly a setup designed to create exactly this scenario. "Park, what's your assessment of the station's condition?" "Reactor containment is holding, but barely. Life support is failing in sections, and the artificial gravity is fluctuating. If we're going to evacuate those people, we need to do it soon. The captain made his decision. Trap or not, there were genuine civilians dying on that station, and he couldn't abandon them based on suspicion alone. All right, we dock and extract. Full rescue protocols, but I want security teams armed and ready. If this is a trap, we'll find out soon enough. The Defiance approached the research station's emergency docking port, their ship's sensors revealing more details of the damage. Whatever had happened here, it had been carefully orchestrated to create maximum distress without completely destroying the facility. Docking clamps engaged, reported Ensign Martinez from the pilot station. Station's automated systems are responding normally. Environmental check. Atmosphere is breathable in most sections, though contaminated in others. Temperature is dropping steadily. Chun stood, checking his sidearm and the tactical tablet that would keep him connected to his ship. Becca, you have the bridge. If anything goes wrong, get the Defiance clear and contact Fleet Command. Sir, regulations require that the senior officer not risk himself on away missions. Chin finished with a slight smile. But regulations also require that we save lives when possible. I'm going over there. He led a 6-person team through the docking tube. Sergeant Major Chun for security, Dr. Vasquez for medical assessment, Chief Wong for technical evaluation, and 3 junior officers for general support. They entered the research station with weapons ready, but not aimed, projecting readiness without aggression. The station's interior was a maze of corridors and laboratories, everything designed around the asteroid's natural structure. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows, and the air carried the metallic taste of failing life support systems. Life signs are concentrated in the central laboratory complex, Dr. Vasquez reported, scanning with a portable medical sensor. They've gathered together for warmth and shared resources. The team moved carefully through the station, Chin's tactical senses screaming that something was wrong even as they found exactly what they'd come for. 23 research scientists huddled in a makeshift shelter, alive but clearly in distress. Thank goodness, gasped Dr. Sarah Kim, apparently the senior researcher. We thought no one received our distress call. We're here to evacuate you, Chin said, while his team began medical assessments. What happened to your station? System failures, Dr. Kim replied, perhaps a little too quickly. Cascade reactor problems, life support malfunctions. It all happened so fast. Chun studied the woman's face, noting micro-expressions that suggested stress beyond what the current situation would warrant. But before he could probe deeper, Sergeant Major Chin's voice crackled through his comm unit. Captain, we have a problem. I'm reading fresh boot prints in the outer corridors, and they're not from the research team. The trap was springing, but not in the way Chun had expected. Instead of overwhelming force or obvious ambush, this felt like careful manipulation designed to place him exactly where someone wanted him. Doctor, he said to the research team leader, I need you to be completely honest with me. Was this really an accident? Dr. Kim's composure cracked. We were told if we cooperated, no one would be hurt. The young queen, she said she just wanted to meet you. The young queen. Chun felt pieces clicking into place. Queen Lyralii of the Zephyrian Empire? She came here personally 3 days ago. Not with a fleet, just a small diplomatic vessel. She said she wanted to capture you, but without violence. She promised the research station would be restored, and we'd be compensated for our cooperation. Chen's mind raced through implications. This wasn't a military trap at all, but something far more sophisticated. A diplomatic ambush designed to get him face-to-face with the enemy's leader. Where is she now? The central laboratory. She's been waiting for you. Against every tactical principle he'd ever learned, Chen found himself walking toward what could be his death or capture. But something about this entire situation intrigued him. A young queen who orchestrated elaborate psychological traps instead of simple military ambushes, who took personal risks to meet her enemies face-to-face. The central laboratory was larger than the rest of the facility, designed for complex stellar observations. At its center stood a figure that made Chun pause in genuine surprise. Queen Lyralii was smaller than he'd expected, and younger. She wore simple clothing rather than royal regalia, and her violet eyes held intelligence that seemed to evaluate him with the same intensity he was directing at her. "Captain Marcus Chun," she said, her voice carrying absolute authority despite her youthful appearance. "Thank you for coming." "Your Majesty," Chun replied, his hand resting on his sidearm, but not drawing it. "I have to admit, this isn't quite what I expected when I woke up this morning." "I imagine not. Would you mind if we spoke privately? I believe we have much to discuss." Chun considered the situation. He was standing in a potential trap, face to face with one of the most powerful leaders in the galaxy, with his ship and crew potentially at risk. Any sane person would refuse. But sanity was a luxury he'd given up when he decided to fight a war against impossible odds. "All right," he said. "Let's talk." The central laboratory of Harmony Station felt surreal as Captain Marcus Chun found himself sitting across from Queen Lyralii at a simple metal table, two of the most wanted individuals in known space having what amounted to a civilized conversation. The research scientists had been evacuated to the Defiance, leaving only the Queen's minimal security detail and Chen's team as witnesses to this unprecedented meeting. "You're wondering why I didn't simply destroy your ship the moment you arrived?" Lyralii said, her violet eyes studying Chun with unconcealed curiosity. "The answer is simple. I need to understand you." Chun leaned back in his chair, maintaining the relaxed posture that had become second nature in dangerous situations. "And I need to understand why the most powerful ruler in the consortium decided to risk a personal meeting with a terrorist." "Terrorist?" Lyralii's eyebrows rose. "Is that how you see yourself?" "It's how your people see me. I destroy your ships, raid your convoys, and make your military commanders look incompetent. In most definitions, that qualifies as terrorism." The young queen considered this. Terrorism implies attacks on civilians to create fear for political purposes. Your targets have been exclusively military, and your apparent goal is to protect human colonies from consortium occupation. I would classify you as an insurgent leader rather than a terrorist. Chen found himself unexpectedly impressed by the precision of her thinking. Most consortium leaders he'd encountered through intelligence reports seemed to view humans as barely sentient animals. Lyralii was clearly operating from a different intellectual framework. "Semantics aside," he said, "you've gone to elaborate lengths to get me here. What do you want?" "To end this war." The simple statement hung in the air between them, loaded with implications that Chen wasn't sure he believed. "The consortium started this war when they decided humanity was too primitive to deserve sovereignty," he replied. "If you want to end it, withdraw from human space." "It's not that simple." Lyralii activated a holographic display between them, showing star maps with territorial boundaries and resource distributions. "The consortium isn't a monolithic empire, Captain. It's an alliance of species held together by economic necessity and mutual defense agreements. I can't simply order withdrawal from human space without providing alternatives." Chun studied the display, noting details that intelligence reports had only hinted at. The consortium was indeed more complex than human propaganda suggested, with internal tensions and competing interests that could potentially be exploited. "What kind of alternatives?" "Trade agreements, technology transfer, mutual defense pacts that don't require occupation." Lyralii manipulated the display, highlighting potential neutral zones and shared territories. "Humans possess something the consortium desperately needs: adaptive thinking. Your species solves problems in ways that consistently surprise us." "Is that what this is about? You want to recruit human problem solvers?" "Partly." The Queen's expression grew more serious. "But there's a larger issue. This war is destabilizing the entire galaxy. Resources being poured into military campaigns could be used for exploration, research, and development. Meanwhile, species that should be focused on advancement are instead perfecting ways to kill each other." Chun felt a chill of recognition. He'd had similar thoughts during quiet moments between battles, wondering what humanity might accomplish if they weren't fighting for survival. And you think I have the authority to negotiate for all humanity? I think you have more influence than you realize. Lyralii called up new data showing resistance cell activities across human space. 17 major resistance groups coordinate their activities based on your tactical successes. Your voice carries weight throughout the human military structure. The holographic display shifted to show intelligence assessments of Chen's reputation among human forces. The data was uncomfortably accurate, detailing his rise from Earth Defense Force officer to resistance leader, tracking his tactical innovations and their adoption by other human commanders. This is impressive intelligence gathering, Chen admitted. But if you think I can simply order humans to stop fighting, you've misunderstood our psychology. Have I? Lyralii leaned forward, her violet eyes intense. Humans follow leaders who demonstrate competence and moral authority. You've proven both repeatedly. If you endorsed a genuine peace agreement, how many resistance fighters would listen? Chen found himself in the uncomfortable position of realizing the young queen might be right. His influence within the resistance had grown beyond mere tactical coordination. Other commanders sought his approval for major operations, and his strategies were being taught at covert training facilities throughout human space. Assuming I had such influence, he said carefully, what would this peace agreement look like? Lyralii activated another section of the holographic display, showing detailed treaty frameworks that had clearly been developed over months of careful planning. Recognition of human sovereignty over your current territories. Establishment of neutral trading zones. Joint research initiatives for mutual benefit. And, most importantly, a formal end to hostilities with guarantees of non-interference. Chen studied the proposed treaty structure, noting provisions that addressed many of humanity's core concerns about consortium domination. But he also saw potential problems. This assumes the other consortium species will accept humanity as equals. Based on our intelligence, many of them still consider us primitive savages, which is why this meeting is crucial. The Queen's voice took on an edge of urgency. If I can demonstrate that humans are capable of strategic thinking at the highest levels, it becomes much easier to argue for equal treatment. And I'm your demonstration. You're my proof that humanity deserves a seat at the galactic table. Chun felt the weight of that statement. He'd never considered himself a representative of his entire species, but the Queen's assessment was forcing him to confront the broader implications of his actions. What about the hardliners on both sides? There are humans who will never trust the consortium, and consortium species who view this war as an opportunity to prove their superiority. Lyralii's expression darkened. The hardliners are exactly why we need to move quickly. Every day this war continues. Positions become more entrenched. On my side, General Karath and the Drakmari military faction see human resistance as a challenge to their warrior culture. They want to prosecute this war until humanity is completely subjugated. And on our side, there are commanders who believe the only good alien is a dead alien, Chen admitted. They won't accept any agreement that leaves consortium presence in human space. Then, we need to give moderates on both sides a victory they can point to, something that demonstrates the benefits of cooperation over conflict. The Queen manipulated the display again, showing a new tactical scenario. There's a consortium research station at Tau Ceti working on terraforming technology. It's currently under threat from a rogue asteroid that our standard deflection techniques can't handle. The gravitational dynamics are too complex for conventional approaches. Chun studied the problem, immediately seeing the challenge. The asteroid's trajectory was chaotic, influenced by multiple gravitational sources in ways that made prediction extremely difficult. You need human adaptive thinking to solve it, he realized. Exactly. A joint mission, human creativity combined with consortium resources, saving a facility that benefits the entire galaxy. It would be impossible for hardliners on either side to argue against the value of cooperation. Chen found himself genuinely intrigued by the problem. The tactical challenge appealed to his strategic instincts, while the humanitarian aspect addressed his moral concerns. But he was also aware that this could be another elaborate trap. How do I know this isn't just a more sophisticated version of what happened here? Another setup to capture me and decapitate the resistance. Lyralii was quiet for a long moment, then stood and walked to the observation windows overlooking the asteroid's rocky surface. Because if I wanted you captured, you would already be in custody. She activated her personal communicator with a gesture Chen hadn't seen before. Instantly, the laboratory's walls became transparent, revealing consortium ships positioned throughout the asteroid field. 3 heavy cruisers, 2 destroyer squadrons, and what appeared to be a mobile command platform. Chen's hand moved instinctively toward his weapon, then stopped as he realized the futility. His ship was hopelessly outnumbered and outgunned. Those ships have been in position since before you arrived, Lyralii continued calmly. I could have destroyed the Defiance or captured your crew at any time. The fact that they're still free should tell you something about my intentions. Chun studied the fleet positions, noting that while overwhelming, they were configured defensively rather than aggressively. The ships were protecting the Queen rather than preparing for battle. It tells me you want something from me that requires voluntary cooperation. Precisely. Lyralii turned back to face him. I could capture you and try to extract information through interrogation. But humans have this inconvenient tendency to become more defiant when coerced. What I need is your willing partnership. Partnership in what, exactly? In proving that our species can work together. In demonstrating that human adaptability combined with consortium resources can achieve things neither of us could accomplish alone. The Queen's voice carried passionate conviction. This war is a waste of potential, Captain. Imagine what we could accomplish if we were exploring the galaxy together instead of trying to destroy each other. Chun found himself facing a decision that would affect not just his own fate, but potentially the future of human civilization. The young Queen was offering exactly what the Resistance had been fighting for: recognition, equality, and an end to the threat of subjugation. But she was also asking him to trust a former enemy and risk his crew in a joint operation that could easily be a trap. I need guarantees, he said finally. My ship and crew leave here safely, regardless of what I decide about your proposal. And if we agree to this joint mission, it happens under conditions that protect human interests. Agreed. Your ship is free to leave at any time. As for the mission parameters, I propose equal representation from both sides, with shared command authority and full transparency about objectives and methods. Chun activated his own communicator, connecting to the Defiance. Commander Hayes, status report. All green, sir. The research team is safely aboard, and we're ready for immediate departure if needed. Any sign of hostile action from the consortium ships? Negative. They've maintained position, but haven't targeted us or made any aggressive moves. Chun closed the connection and studied Queen Lyralii's face, looking for signs of deception. What he saw instead was something he hadn't expected: hope. Assuming I agreed to this partnership, he said, how would we handle the politics? Both our peoples have reasons to distrust each other. Carefully and transparently, we document everything, provide regular updates to both sides, and ensure that the mission benefits everyone involved. Lyralii returned to the table, her expression serious. This isn't just about saving a research station, Captain. It's about creating a precedent for cooperation that can serve as a foundation for lasting peace. Chun considered the implications. A successful joint mission would indeed provide powerful ammunition for peace advocates on both sides. But failure could set back any hope of negotiated settlement by years or decades. I'll need to consult with my crew and with Resistance leadership before making any final commitments. Of course, but time is a factor. The asteroid impact is projected for 18 standard days. If we're going to act, we need to begin planning immediately. The captain stood, decision crystallizing in his mind. All right, Your Majesty. I'll agree to preliminary planning sessions, with the understanding that either side can withdraw if conditions become unacceptable. Lyralii smiled, the expression transforming her face and making her look like the young woman she actually was rather than the galactic ruler she'd been forced to become. Thank you, Captain. I believe we're about to make history. As they shook hands in the human custom she had apparently studied, Chen found himself wondering if he was making the smartest decision of his career or the biggest mistake of his life. The answer would determine not just his own fate, but the future relationship between humanity and the stars. There's one more thing, Lyralii said as they prepared to leave the laboratory. The joint mission will require you to visit Zephyria Prime for planning sessions. You'll be walking directly into the heart of consortium territory. Chen paused, recognizing the ultimate test of trust she was proposing. And you'll be guaranteeing the safety of someone your own military considers a terrorist. I'll be guaranteeing the safety of someone I consider a potential ally. The distinction, Chen realized, would make all the difference in the galaxy. Captain Marcus Chun stood in the most heavily guarded throne room in the galaxy, surrounded by the crystalline architecture of Zephyria Prime, and realized that Queen Lyralii had been right about human adaptability. 3 weeks ago, if someone had told him he'd be presenting tactical plans to the consortium's ruling council as an equal partner rather than a capture prisoner, he would have recommended they seek medical attention. Yet here he was, wearing formal diplomatic credentials and representing humanity at the highest levels of galactic governance. The throne room itself was a marvel of engineering and artistry, its crystal walls refracting light from 3 suns into cascading rainbows that shifted as the planet rotated. Representatives from dozens of species filled the space. The towering Drachmarie with their scaled hides and predatory grace, the ethereal Christarch whose translucent forms pulsed with inner light, the mechanical Nexus Collective with their perfect geometric bodies, and many others Chun had only seen in intelligence briefings. All of them were staring at him. Honorable delegates, Queen Lyralii's voice carried clearly through the vast chamber. We are gathered today to address the crisis at Tau Ceti Research Station and to witness an unprecedented cooperation between the consortium and humanity. General Karatha's reptilian features displayed obvious displeasure as he stood to address the assembly. Your Majesty, while I acknowledge the theoretical value of human tactical thinking, this proposal asks us to trust our most advanced technology to a species that has been actively hostile for 6 standard years. Chen had expected this objection. Over the past 3 weeks of planning sessions, he'd come to respect Karath as a competent military leader who genuinely believed he was protecting his people's interests. The general wasn't evil or bigoted, just constrained by military thinking that valued predictability over innovation. General Karath raises valid concerns, Chun said, stepping forward to address the assembly directly. Trust must be earned through actions, not words. That's why I propose we begin with limited cooperation and build toward greater collaboration based on demonstrated results. Admiral Thesha of the Christarch Navy shimmered as she spoke. Captain Chun, our analysis indicates the Tau Ceti problem requires solutions beyond conventional physics. Human tactical approaches have proven unconventional. How do you propose to address gravitational dynamics that exceed our computational capabilities? It was the opening Chun had been hoping for. He activated the holographic projector Lyralii had provided, displaying the complex orbital mechanics of the Tau Ceti system. The rogue asteroid was indeed a nightmare scenario, its trajectory influenced by 3 different gravitational sources in ways that created chaotic, unpredictable movement patterns. Traditional approaches assume we need to perfectly calculate the asteroid's path and intercept it at a specific point, Chen explained, manipulating the display to show various failed deflection scenarios. But what if we don't try to predict where it's going? What if we change the rules of the problem entirely? He highlighted a series of smaller asteroids in stable orbits throughout the system. Instead of trying to hit a moving target, We create a gravitational cascade that forces the rogue asteroid into a predictable path. We use the system's chaos against itself. The plan was audacious in its simplicity. Rather than fighting the unpredictable gravitational influences, they would amplify them in carefully controlled ways. Small nudges to strategically placed mass concentrations would create a domino effect, ultimately channeling the rogue asteroid away from the research station and into a stable orbit where it could be safely processed for resources. Commander Vexhai of Zephyrian Intelligence leaned forward, his metallic implants gleaming. The computational requirements for such an operation would be enormous. Even with our most advanced systems, calculating the precise interactions, which is why we're not going to calculate them, Chen interrupted, earning shocked silence from the assembly. We're going to feel them. He activated another section of the display, showing human brain scan data that had been carefully prepared for this presentation. Human consciousness operates on principles of pattern recognition and intuitive leaps that don't translate well to computational models. We see connections that pure logic might miss. Queen Lyralii stood, adding her voice to the explanation. Captain Chun has proposed a hybrid approach. Consortium computational power provides the baseline calculations, while human intuition identifies the subtle patterns that determine optimal intervention points. You're asking us to base crucial decisions on hunches, General Karoth growled, his scales shifting to deep purple. I'm asking you to base them on a different kind of intelligence, Chen replied calmly. The same intelligence that has allowed my species to win battles against superior force through tactical innovations your computers never predicted. The debate continued for hours, with representatives from various species raising concerns about everything from resource allocation to political implications. Chun found himself impressed by the depth of analysis and genuine commitment to finding solutions, even among those who opposed the plan. Finally, Elder Vaxen of the ancient ethereal collective spoke, their energy-based form flickering with deep consideration. This proposal represents more than a tactical solution. It suggests a fundamental shift in how we approach galactic governance. If successful, it establishes precedent for including humanity as equal partners in consortium affairs, which is exactly why it's so dangerous, added Counselor Zarek of the militant faction. Success could lead to demands for representation, territory rights, even voting authority in consortium decisions. Chun exchanged a glance with Queen Lyralii, recognizing the moment when the conversation had moved beyond technical details to core political questions. This was what they had both understood from the beginning. The asteroid mission was really about proving whether humans deserved a place in galactic civilization. Counselor Zarek, Chun said, with respect, those concerns assume that human participation in galactic affairs would be harmful to existing members. But what if it's beneficial? What if human perspectives help solve problems that have been intractable for decades? He activated a new section of the holographic display, showing data Lyralii's intelligence services had compiled on various consortium challenges. Resource distribution inefficiencies, communication barriers between species with radically different thought processes, innovation stagnation in several key technological areas. These problems persist because they're being approached by minds that all think in similar patterns. Human cognitive architecture is different enough to potentially offer fresh solutions. Admiral Thesh's crystalline form brightened with interest. You're proposing that humanity's relative primitiveness is actually an advantage? I'm proposing that different isn't inferior, it's complementary. The same way your computational abilities exceed ours, our pattern recognition might exceed yours in specific applications. The debate shifted as delegates began discussing specific examples of human tactical innovations and their implications for broader problem-solving applications. Chen found himself fielding technical questions about everything from resource optimization to diplomatic strategy, demonstrating the breadth of human thinking in ways that clearly surprised many assembly members. As the session progressed, he noticed the subtle shifts in body language and tone that indicated changing opinions. Fear and suspicion were gradually being replaced by curiosity and cautious optimism. Very well, Queen Lyralii announced as the formal debate concluded. We shall proceed with the Tau Ceti mission as proposed. Joint command authority between Captain Shun and Admiral Thesha, with full transparency protocols for all participating species. General Karatha's expression remained disapproving, but he nodded acceptance. If we're doing this, we do it properly. Full military support, backup contingencies, and immediate extraction protocols if the operation becomes compromised. Over the following days, Chen found himself immersed in the most complex logistical planning of his career. The joint task force included ships and personnel from 6 different species, each bringing unique capabilities and perspectives to the mission. Working alongside Admiral Thesha proved particularly interesting. The Christarch's computational thinking complemented Chen's intuitive approaches in ways that neither could have achieved alone. Where she could calculate precise orbital mechanics, he could sense the underlying patterns that suggested optimal timing. Where he could visualize creative solutions, she could model their practical implementation. Your species thinks in metaphors, she observed during one planning session. You described the gravitational cascade as nudging dominoes rather than calculating force vectors and momentum transfers. Does that bother you? Chen asked. On the contrary, it's fascinating. Our mathematics model the universe as equations to be solved. Your metaphors model it as a story to be influenced. Both approaches arrive at valid solutions, but through completely different cognitive pathways. The cultural exchange worked both ways. Chen found himself learning to think in terms of probability cascades and quantum uncertainty principles, concepts that expanded his tactical thinking in unexpected directions. Human intuition, when informed by consortium scientific knowledge, produced insights that surprised everyone involved. The mission launched 2 days before the projected asteroid impact, with Chun aboard the consortium science vessel Probability as the joint task force moved toward Tau Ceti. His own ship, the Defiance, accompanied the fleet as part of the human diplomatic contingent. Approaching target coordinates, reported the Christarch navigation officer. Gravitational sensors are confirming the chaotic trajectory patterns. Chen studied the real-time sensor data, feeling the familiar tingle of recognition as patterns emerged from the apparent randomness. The rogue asteroid was currently influenced by 3 major gravitational sources, but there were subtle variations in its motion that suggested additional factors. Admiral, can you model the gravitational influences from the gas giant's ring system? I think there's a resonance pattern we're missing. Thesha's form pulsed with computational activity. Confirmed. The ring particles are creating microgravitational influences that compound over time. This explains the trajectory variations our models couldn't account for. Working together, they identified the precise intervention points that would redirect the asteroid's chaotic motion into a predictable path. The operation required split-second timing and perfect coordination between multiple ships, each making subtle adjustments to the gravitational environment. Initiate cascade sequence, Chen called out as the task force moved into position. Remember, we're not fighting the chaos, we're directing it. What followed was perhaps the most precise military operation in galactic history. Ships from 6 different species, operating under joint human consortium command, executed a plan that required both computational perfection and intuitive timing. The asteroid's path bent slowly, but inexorably away from the research station, guided by gravitational influences that turned natural chaos into controlled redirection. Impact trajectory has been successfully altered, Admiral Thesha announced as the final calculations confirmed success. The research station is safe, and the asteroid has been placed in a stable orbit suitable for resource extraction. The implications of success went far beyond saving a single facility. As news of the joint operation spread throughout both human and consortium space, it provided exactly the precedent Queen Lyralii had hoped for. Moderate voices on both sides could now point to concrete evidence that cooperation produced better results than conflict. "This changes everything," Lyralii said during the post-mission debrief aboard Zephyria Prime. "The success has given us political cover to pursue broader peace negotiations." Chen nodded, but he was already thinking about larger implications. "It also establishes a new paradigm for how different species can work together. The human-crystal partnership model could be applied to other combinations." "You're thinking like a diplomat now," the young queen observed with a smile. "I'm thinking like someone who's seen what's possible when we stop trying to destroy each other and start trying to build something better." The peace negotiations that followed took months to complete, with representatives from dozens of worlds hammering out details of trade agreements, territorial boundaries, and mutual defense pacts. But the foundation had been established at Tau Ceti, proof that human creativity and consortium resources could achieve things neither could accomplish alone. General Karath, despite his initial opposition, became one of the strongest supporters of the new alliance. "I was wrong," he admitted during the treaty signing ceremony. "I thought strength came from domination. But the human approach has shown me that true strength comes from knowing when to adapt." As Captain Shan stood in the same throne room, where he had once been considered a terrorist, now holding the rank of ambassador and wearing the insignia of the newly formed Human Consortium Alliance, he reflected on how completely his life had changed. The young queen who had commanded his capture had instead given him something far more valuable, a chance to prove that his species deserved a place among the stars. "Any regrets?" Queen Lyralii asked as the ceremony concluded. Chen looked out through the crystal walls at the ships of the combined fleet, human vessels flying alongside consortium cruisers in formations that would have been unthinkable months earlier. "Only that it took us so long to get here," he replied. "Imagine what we might have accomplished if we'd started with cooperation instead of conflict." Lyralii smiled, the expression no longer carrying the weight of a ruler forced to make impossible decisions, but the joy of a young woman who had helped change the galaxy for the better. "Then, perhaps that should be our goal for the future," she said, "to ensure that no other species has to prove their worth through war before being accepted as equals." As the combined fleet prepared to depart Zephyria Prime, carrying the news of the new alliance to every corner of known space, Chen realized that walking into that throne room had indeed been the most important decision of his life. Not because he had surrendered, but because he had chosen to believe in the possibility of something better than endless war. The Ghost Captain had become an ambassador, and the young Queen's command had become the foundation for a new age among the stars.